rise and pledge allegiance to the flag.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. In your packet, you all had the May 26, 2020 regular council meetings. Are there any additions or corrections to those minutes? If not, they'll be stand approved as read. Report of the town manager.
Thank you, Mayor Rush, members of council. Several things to touch on this evening. First off, I wanted to report that on its own initiative, the Bedford County Board of Supervisors recently voted to allocate $550,000 of funding related to the CARES Act to the town for expenses related to our response to the coronavirus pandemic. We are working with county staff to identify qualified expenditures, and I just wanted to take this opportunity to publicly thank our colleagues at Bedford County for thinking of us in such a proactive and considerate manner. Also, I wish to thank and commend the organizers of several recent public events held on our streets. Thank the parade honoring Bedford County High School graduates, the Solidarity and Justice March, and the peaceful rally were all very uplifting examples of the extraordinary community and wonderful citizens that it is our privilege to serve. On administrative matters, I want to note that Mr. McCormick has applied for the necessary permits to commence the cleanup work on the Bedford Middle School site. We have received 16 applications for Phase 2 of the Business Assistance Program. Those will be reviewed by the Town Economic Development Authority at its meeting on Friday. The Police Department received a positive recommendation from the Review Committee with regard to our pursuit of national accreditation administered by CALEA. A final decision on that process is expected in November. Also want to take this opportunity to note that we do have employment opportunities available with the town. We are currently seeking 4 police officers and also 1 person to join our electric utilities right-of-way crew. So I would encourage people to look into those opportunities as they can. And on one final administrative note, I want to advise you that I will be away from the office on Friday, June 12th and Monday, June 15th. And that concludes my report, but I'll be pleased to respond to any questions you have.
Any questions for the town manager? Thank you, Bart. Appearances before council, the ones that I have signed up, I assume are here for the public hearing. So we'll just call you at the public hearing. Council comments. Start to my right with Bruce. Do you have any?
The only comment I have is the 2 things that were held on Saturday and Sunday were very well organized, and I was proud of the folks that attended and did the work there. It was a good program for them to do. I didn't hear any negativity that we don't need.
Same thing, Councilman Johansson, Chief Foreman Mike Miller, and the event people that put the event together. The last 2 events we had Saturday was great events, and Sunday it was a great event for our town. So, like I said, they've done an excellent job, keep everything calm and collected.
I mean, I echo the same thing, but I think it's important to also say that our police department is recognized in this community as being a partner. Todd, we appreciate the work you do. It's recognized throughout this community, and keep up the good work. We really do appreciate it. Bart, and thank you for speaking as well Sunday. Appreciate that.
I'll say the same thing. I was here Saturday. It got a little warm. I left with Bob's thing, standing for a couple of hours. But I give it all to Todd and the staff, and you do a good job keeping us together and keeping us straight and having a good staff. And I had 31 years in that world, and it's a little bit different, but I always treated people the way I expect to be treated, and I think that's the way everybody should do. And unfortunately, there's 800,000 cops in this country, and it doesn't take one or two bad apples to run it off.
I have no comment.
I can only echo what has just previously been said. I could not be there Saturday. I was there Sunday. And I was happy to see the good response from Bart, from Todd. I mean, it's obvious they're doing a great job here by keeping the peace, keeping the people together, and whatever concerns they do have, they are addressed immediately. Just keep up the good work.
Okay, report of council committees. Mr. Slide, do you have a report?
Yep. Electric committee met previously. One of the issues that we talked about was the governor's order where the electric department wasn't charging late fees or disconnecting. So we talked about a program of going forward. And while we haven't finalized that program, we're waiting for the June 15th deadline of the state to issue whatever their recommendations are going to be. We have some recommendations, but we'll kind of wait and see how that comes out first. I do want to reiterate that we are not governed by the state when it comes to Bedford Power, but we do want to at least listen to the recommendations first.
How about the outage?
What's that?
You want to talk about that outage?
Yeah, we will. I'll discuss the. We have a rebuild of the Mosley station. It's one of Bedford's 2 transmission delivery points. It's being done by APCO. There is a risk for an outage between October 14th and November 20th. It's not a significant risk. It's if there is an issue, there is a significant chance that we will be without power for a short period of time while they try to repair that. It's a necessary evil that we can't control. APCO is rebuilding that, not us, but do want everyone to be aware that there is, between October 14th and November 20th, there is a risk that the power may go out, and if it does, it will not be a short term. It will be, at minimum, probably a 24-hour deal. So just wanted you to be aware of that issue.
We know that ahead of time, right?
That's pretty much the notice that we have. I mean, it's.
They won't be able to tell that it's.
No, I mean, the chances of it happening are slim. It's just, you need to know if it happens. It's not something that they can just flip over to a different line. They have to have a crew from West Virginia come in and literally rewire a whole new high voltage line in order to get us back up and running. But it's one of these necessary evils that has to happen. Now, it will hugely benefit us in the future once this transformation is done. But just want you to be aware that during that transformation, there is going to be, some sketchy time there.
It's an unpredictable.
Correct, yeah.
That's
We'll cross our fingers and hope nothing happens and everybody's tickled to death afterwards.
Okay, in revisions to the agenda, Mr. Warner, I would like to move the closed session, because we have our attorneys and Mr. McCormick and what have you, after the zoning ordinance review roll call. We'll do the closed session and then go into the budget.
You need a motion?
I don't think we need a motion for that.
If there's a consensus, that's
Yeah.
Okay, public hearing, conditional use amendment, Bedford Middle School redevelopment. Mr. Water?
actually, will you read the notice, or Julie, would you like to?
For the public hearing?
I can do it.
Well, I guess I could do it,
No.
but you do.
Notice is hereby given of public hearings to be held by the Planning Commission at 5:30 PM on Thursday, June 4th, and by the Town Council at 7 PM on Tuesday, June 9th, 2020, at the Town Municipal Building, Council Hall, 215 East Main Street, for the purpose of consideration of amending the Bedford Middle School campus rezoning and conditional use permit at 503 and 507 Longwood Avenue, Bedford, Virginia, 24523. tax parcels 194A 170T and 174.51T, 174.52T, 174.53T, and 174.54T, consisting of approximately 9.54 acres located on the north side of Longwood Avenue and Peak Street and parcels along Westview Avenue, to remove the auditorium and increase the number of apartment units to 60. The request is being made by Waukesha Development and Company for Old Yellow LLC, 245 East Bank Street, Petersburg, Virginia, 23803. Information regarding this has been on file in the Office of Planning and Community Development. Anyone who is in favor of or opposed to the request will have an opportunity to express his or her views at this hearing. Published by the authority of the Planning Commission and the Town Council of the Town of Bedford.
Okay, the public hearing is now open regarding the public notice that Mr. Warner just addressed. If you speak, when you speak, step forward and speak, and we have several people here to speak with that. State your name and your physical address where you live. I can call the people on the list, or we can go from out. How about Ann? And can you come on up?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the council for listening to me yet again about this issue. I'd also like to thank Bart for giving me some information that I requested at the Planning Commission meeting, one of which was a list of expenditures that had been made involving the incentive grant that had been given to Mr. McCormick. And the second also was a clarification from the DEQ, because I did ask the DEQ whether we had any danger of toxic materials in the site. And the DEQ has responded, and Bart just gave me their response. And it says here an asbestos survey was conducted on the building. Some asbestos was identified in the flooring and caulking, and this information is contained in the asbestos survey report that was provided to DEQ by Mr. McCormick. DEQ shared the report with Dolly. Mr. McCormick stated there is no plan to remove the flooring at the present time. And then they say that the remediation and removal of asbestos in the structure falls under the jurisdiction of the Department of Labor and Industry. That's Dolly. And Doug Wiggins, who's the investigator, has provided guidance and will follow up on any related issues. And that makes me feel a bit better, because Mr. McCormick said at the planning meeting that there was no asbestos at all in the building. So I wanted to thank Bart for that clarification. I had 2 points that I wanted to make. One is a question and the other is a point. I just would be interested if you all would tell the public what is the total amount of taxpayers' money that's being spent on this project, okay? Separate from the $400,000 that we all know about, which is now being accounted for. And specifically what I'm interested in are things like the legal fees for the of council, for the town council. That would be Mr. Lockerbie. I'd like to know what the Bedford Middle School arson fire costs amounted to, if you have that. That would include the fire department, the fire marshal, state police, law enforcement, and investigators. And then, aside from the fire, I would be interested to know what the man-hour costs for the Bedford Police Department have been since the summer of 2019, when they've had to actually serve almost as a security service for the building, since the power was shut off and therefore there was no security, electronic security or fire alarms in the building. Living next door, I saw many times, sometimes every day or every evening, unmarked and marked vehicles coming to the school, investigating various things of, including kiddie tune, what I call kiddie tune vandalism, rocks thrown through the windows, unsecured doors and so forth, and toilet paper strewn all over the stairways, culminating in this arson. And it disturbed me no end that the police detective who was investigating this fire told my husband and me several days after the fire that he had spent 6 months trying to get Mr. McCormick to reinstate power, therefore the security and fire systems, so it would have been easier to protect the building. And of course, the police department, as I understand from media reports, had to install cameras, and that's how they caught the alleged arsonist. So patrols, investigations, and so forth, and I've been told by several members of the police department that investigating an arson like this is highly costly and highly time-consuming. And I think that since we're taxpayers, we're entitled to know exactly how much this whole project has cost from the time that Waukesha took control of the property as the lessee up until now. And so far, I haven't seen that, and I think it would be helpful for the public to see it. Now, finally, I have one question here, and this refers to the lease, and it's on page 18, and it's paragraph 6, subparagraph A, and I'm going to read it to you, so I've got a copy that my attorney obtained from Mr. Lockerbie a while back. It says, the lessee, Waukesha, shall at all times during the term of this lease and at its own cost and expense, keep and maintain in repair and good condition, ordinary wear and tear accepted, that's parenthesis, all buildings and improvements at any time erected on the leased premises, and shall use all reasonable precaution to prevent waste, damage, or injury. And so the question is, when the police detective says that all of these security and fire systems have been turned off, then I wonder whether this aspect of the lease has been abridged or breached. And that's a question that only you all and the town attorney and Mr. Lockerbie really can answer. But I feel that it's a question that needs to be asked. Thank you.
And would you state your full name and address?
Sure. It's Anne, A-N-N-E, Hayes, H-A-Y-E-S, Suhanov, S-O-U-K-H-A-N-O-V, and I'm at 512 Peak Street, Bedford, Virginia, 24523, directly next door to the Bedford Middle School, only 19 feet away, and we consider ourselves the injured party in this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tony, go ahead. Again, state your name and address.
All right, my name's Tony Clater. I live at 4276 Big Island Highway, Bedford. Really don't know where to start here, but I'm pretty sure I'm just wasting my time from what I've been hearing and been told. We're here because of a very poorly negotiated deal to start with. Everybody here on this council wasn't part of that. I understand that, okay? But there should have been safeguards in on this deal in the beginning. It was up to council to make sure that if the building had security and fire systems in there, and y'all allowed him to cut it off, you know, it's y'all's fault the school burned up the ground like that, okay? It's just simple as that. The other thing is, y'all should have made sure he had adequate insurance on the building. So if it did burn to the ground, it could be put back, just like it was, okay? And we're here today because he wants to do away with the auditorium and add 10 more apartments. Well, the first 50 apartments was a bad idea to start with. the town of Bedford, it's gonna be hard to handle an influx of 50. Dan wants to make 60 out of it. You know, you got to start thinking a little bit outside of the little ball here. I know y'all wanted to do something with school. You had other options. Ain't like you had to jump on the first thing that come along, but that seems to be what everybody wanted to do, okay? But what I'm understanding is he was underinsured. That's the reason why he says it's not feasible to put the auditorium back. I don't really care whether he thinks it's feasible to put it back or not. The original deal that he had was that the auditorium would stay there. He would keep it up and it would be used for the general public of the town and county of Bedford. So, you know, if you got a deal, you gotta stick to it. If he didn't have enough insurance on it, I don't care. He can take the rest of the money out of his pocket, put the school back exactly like it was and walk, as far as I'm concerned. But I know all y'all scared to death that he's gonna walk. I do know that for a fact. And y'all will do anything at this point to keep him from walking. Well, if you make him put it back like it was, and he walks, what have you lost? You gave it to him anyway. You can start from scratch, try something else, and hopefully the next time make a better deal. But this one bit all of you in the butt that negotiated this thing. It's uncalled for, and it's uncalled for if y'all agree to renegotiate the original agreement contract and let him do this. Because y'all should have made sure he had adequate insurance on it. You should have took every precaution and seen that he did to protect that school to start with. Now I know all of you right now might be getting mad at me. Now I like all of you, but I'm stepping on your toes and I really don't care at this point. Because the truth is the truth, and this is what you're winding up having to deal with now because of very poor judgment to start with, as far as I'm concerned. Now, I realize y'all think he's the savior, but he's not, okay? And the next thing is, right before this deal happened, the property was worth $7-some odd million, and then it was reduced to $1.8 million, just because he was gonna take it over. Of course, he says the building was worth less than nothing, is what he stated in the planning commission meeting that last week. Said it's not worth nothing, it's worth less than nothing. Well, you know, if something's worth less than nothing, why in the world would you want it? So, I mean, he's planning on making money on it somewhere, and I don't blame him for that. But when y'all agreed in the beginning to have that much of an influx of more rental property, apartments in the town of Bedford, when he can't even keep what he's got over there full, you know, there was no need for any 50 extra apartments. And you didn't think not one time about the investors that have been in this town, born and raised in this town, and been investing in this town for years. By adding that many apartments when they're not needed, will, in the long run, probably hurt the rest of the investors in this town. But didn't nobody think about that either. They was just on a train. They was on this train. They was going. They won't gonna stop for nothing, and they won't gonna look upside away from that little ball. Well, your crystal ball ain't gonna help you this time, because it's already known what happened here. And like I said, all y'all that originally negotiated this thing, it's on y'all. Just like right after the deal was done, he applied, wanted a 6-month extension right from the get-go. Y'all approved that, from what I understand. Not that, you know, you're working against Bedford County Board of Supervisors and the county treasurer's office when you reduce the value of the building from $7-some odd million to 1.8. I just did a brief calculation on it. To me, that's like $43,000, $44,000 a year between the town and the county together lost because of that. If it was worth $7 million right before he took it over, it's still worth that. I can't get nobody to answer the question as to who done it, why it was done, or nothing. Nobody wants to answer that question. Makes no sense. You know, y'all need to start thinking more about getting some industry in here to get people to move here, stay here, and spend money here all the time, and quit worrying about, you know, this being a little town to come visit for an hour or two and then leave. You know, we ain't gonna be able to survive that way. This is, y'all just worried about the tourists. Y'all got to get on a different page, I'm telling you. You know, and I know y'all can do it, you just gotta wanna do it. But that's all I'm gonna say, and like I said, I already know how the outcome of this is gonna go, so I'm not gonna waste too much of my time either, because I'm just blowing in the wind. But I just want to let every one of you know, and I have some associates that feel the same way, and I told them after that planning commission meeting last week, I said, it's pretty much a done deal. I said, we're just wasting our time if we go up there. Because I do not think any of you have the backbone to turn this man down because you're scared he's gonna walk away from it. But the thing to do is, if he don't want it, that's fine, but make him put it back like it was, and then let him walk. You can always do something else. Y'all have a nice day. Thanks for listening to me.
Thank you, Tim. Jim?
My name's Jim Messier. I live at 1621 Kingston Circle here in the town of Bedford. First, because golly, the world kind of fell apart since the fire, and I haven't had much of an opportunity to see you, but I mean, I certainly have felt for Nick and Ann and Dave and Kara as the neighbors since the fire. I'm going to keep it real short. I guess, look, not wanting to rehash how long it took to negotiate the initial work with Waukesha. You know, we were moving forward. I think we all would just assume the fire not have happened, but it did. I'm certainly, you know, was looking forward to whatever was going to become of the auditorium, but it's gone. And so I would encourage you. You know, it's a good project as far as I can see, and I would encourage you to move forward and renegotiate, because the only other thing that I can see happening if we don't do the apartments there is that we end up with a hole and it's bulldozed, because I can't see too many other opportunities where people are going to want to come in and work on that project. So we've got somebody that has done what he said he was going to do throughout other projects in the town, and I feel certainly good about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to speak regarding middle school?
With that being said, the public hearing is closed. Okay, on the new business, no old business, new business, ordinance, conditional use amendment, Bedford Middle School redevelopment.
It's Mayor Rush, members of council. Waukesha Development LLC is seeking an amendment to the conditional use permit that was originally granted as part of their rezoning process, which was approved on October 22nd, 2019. The essential change is to remove the auditorium use from the project proposal and to increase the number of market rate apartments within the brick building from 50 to 60. Planning Commission met on June 4th, 2020 and conducted a public hearing regarding the matter. Mrs. Ann Suwanov, Mr. Tony Clater, and Mrs. Teresa Canode spoke at the public hearing. By a vote of 4 ayes, 2 nays, and 1 member absent, the Planning Commission recommended approval of the amendment to the conditional use permit, and tonight Town Council is requested to approve the attached ordinance amending the conditional use permit related to the redevelopment of the middle school property.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the amendment to the zoning ordinance.
I'll second.
Discussion.
You want to go first? first you made it.
Go ahead.
I'd like to kind of clear some of the, address some of the comments that were made, especially since my toes were stepped on and my backbone was called in question. I want to make sure people understand, this was not a deal that was put together overnight. As a matter of fact, this was put out to bid, and there were companies from other states that came in to bid on this project to look at it. So it wasn't done just locally either. It was so long ago, Mr. Warner wasn't even the town manager when we started this project. We negotiated it for over 18 months. And I can tell you, it wasn't one-sided negotiation. We ended up with a far better off deal once it was completed than we did when we first started. And that was from both parties working through it. 18 months. Now, I know how I was when I decided to run. I heard government takes forever. Now I'm being told we're rushing it through. I can't figure out where the happy medium is here. So, you know, that's just some of the things that were discussed. You know, as far as the taxes are concerned, you probably couldn't find out from the town because we don't assess tax properties. Is that correct? So you wouldn't find that with the town. We don't do tax assessments in the town. And also, if you will go back and look, you'll find out that there were zero taxes being paid on that property for over 100 years. So you can't calculate a revenue loss on something that wasn't collecting taxes to begin with. So to say that it's a bad deal is not accurate. I think it is the best deal that we could come up with. And one of the arguments that was during the process, when there were other members on council during this process, was that we could find other people. And the fact of the matter is, we tried to find other people. And I took it upon myself one night to go home and Google former schools for sale. Try that. You'll find tons of them everywhere. There are plenty of them. They will give them to you because they are zero market value. They're not people clamoring to find schools. As a matter of fact, I contacted 2 other localities during this process to ask them, how do you proceed when you have a deal with a school? And both council members from other localities said, if you have one in place or you're even discussing it, take it. You will never get rid of the school otherwise. So due diligence was done, and it was done over an 18-month period. And we discussed with people in the town. We didn't just go behind closed doors and discuss it. I discussed it with Mr. Cincinnati. I discussed it with Nick also. And I felt I came up with the best decision that I could come up with. So that's, I just wanted to set the record straight that we didn't.
The discussion we had in the very initial, because I was on the committee, was that it would be a great opportunity to have a higher education facility, technical, and that's it.
Correct, we discussed it, that's what I said.
That's the only conversation we had.
Okay, thank you, Nick.
So, I mean, I just wanted to say, this wasn't something pushed through, this wasn't something that I just, you know, am scared that we would lose an investment. The fact of the matter is, it is an investment, and it's a good investment, and it's been a proven investment with this developer in this area. And one of the things that I did want to finish with is, and I want clarification on this if I can, there are 2 separate parts to this deal. There's a initial phase, which is the discovery phase or the due diligence phase. And the second part of that is the performance agreement. And until the due diligence is completed, the performance agreement, Mr. Lockerbie, if you could speak to this if you don't mind, the performance agreement doesn't kick in until after that due diligence has been sufficed.
Correct. There's a point at which, under the lease, Waukesha has the ability to exercise an option to purchase the property, and there are certain circumstances under which it also vests, which means he has to do it. And that's when the performance actually starts. Right now, we are still in that due diligence phase, trying to figure out whether the project is feasible or not.
Thank you. Okay.
And this zoning tonight is a big part of that, I would say. I mean, Brian, I think you hit the nail on the head on a lot of what we went through. Remind the public that we had, I believe, 2 or 3 public hearings. It was a very open process, and I think everybody did the very best job they could on this agreement. Like I said, we're not finished. Obviously, we've got to talk about the zoning change tonight. We've still got to make changes to the performance agreement to comply with whatever we do tonight. So I don't think we're finished trying to make the best deal. I don't think, like I said, there's not a lot of good options. That arsonist didn't leave us a lot of good options. But to get, maybe some people don't want 60 new residents in the town of Bedford. But I think 60 new residents it will help our town grow, will help our businesses grow, will continue to make this a vibrant community. I think it's a great idea. The fact that we could potentially, we're going to get hopefully a boutique hotel out of this deal. How many times have you heard we don't have really good lodging options? Well, we got a chance right now. All we can do is do the best job for this community as we can. I think we're doing that in this regard, and we'll keep working on it. It's not done, and that's kind of where I am on the situation right now. I would like to point out, I know there was some concern in the Planning Commission, and I would like to get the numbers, Bart, if you don't mind. Parking. Initially, with the old plan, required parking was going to be around 225. Dave, can you help me? It was 225 required spaces.
I don't remember the exact number.
Somewhere in that ballpark, and now that's number's going to drop close to 200 with the new site plan, I believe. So, there was concern about parking. It just went down by 10%. So, that's another bonus to where we are right now.
I agree with Mr. Sly, Mr. Black. I mean, this was going on at least a year before I got on council. I've been on for a year and a half. I know you guys have been working through it, and it took me a while to figure it out because I had some of the same questions as everybody else, like, hey, if we looked around, But once I got my teeth into this and the agreement, it's a long form to go through, which I think y'all know I've went through myself with Mr. Sensenag, and this has not been easy. And I mean, we're trying to do what's best for the town. It's hard. We are not going to make everybody happy. There's no way. I have no ulterior motives here. I mean, I'm on council and I ran to help the town. I hope I am, and there are elections, not a lot of people running. So, people are free to do that if they don't like what we're doing now. I feel like even though we only had 2 people speak tonight to it, I think we do have a lot of public support. And after the arsonist, we are in a difficult spot. I mean, there's no question. But to act like we're scared that Mr. McCormick's going to run away, no, quite frankly, I am thankful he's here. And, he's done good work. We've looked into his other projects. He's been successful at what he does. I think we're fortunate to have this opportunity.
Well, all I'll say is, I consider the source of Mr. Plater, and I won't say anything else because it'd all be negative. I've known him too many years. But the positive is, and I've been on this since we started this project, and they started talking about it long before the middle school was vacant. But the additional, first of all, one thing I wanted to make sure was Mr. McCormick would put market rate apartments in there. Once they come in there, that's a plus for our community. That's people with disposable income that can spend in our businesses and our restaurants. That's all I got to say. I won't even give him credence to respond to any of his comments. Just consider the source.
One thing I've said, you know, this has been a long process, and we've been working on this for a long time. I know that there has been, how many people was it that looked at Mr. Warner? I think he put it across the whole 2 or 3 states to offer this school to somebody, didn't you? So in the process of doing this, you know, the fire was very unexpected. And did sit back the whole project. It set back a lot of things that was looking grand at the moment, and then it went down the hill real fast. You know, it's hard to move, it's hard to remember the past and all the stuff that's gone, but you know, the best thing to do if we need to move forward is move forward with what we have now. Because I think that is the best option that we have at the moment. And the only thing I would have a question with Mr. McCormick, if this project if we did approve this tonight, when would cleanup start?
Thursday,
Sir?
2 days.
2 days?
And we've got the permit, we started putting dumpsters there today, so there'll be people on job Thursday.
Thank you.
So how long will it take, David?
It'll take anywhere 60 to 90 days. We're going to gauge the complexity, we can really dig into it, but I think we'll see really good momentum there in 60 days.
What protection do we have for the neighbors of this, while this cleanup is going on?
Protection?
Yeah, is there anything to make sure these folks are?
In terms of means and methods, we talked about where things are coming out of the building. It'll be on the inside, in between the 2 buildings, and around the back, it'll be staying off either of the neighbor side, just coming out through the middle. With all
Is there going to be?
The dumpster is in the alley right now,
between the 2.
between our house and the school. There's a big dumpster.
Let's take that stuff out the back.
And it's actually in the alley, right by our kitchen, and bedroom window.
I'll take a look at it.
I'd appreciate it. I talked with Stewart.
Okay.
He twice, and I saw him when he delivered the dumpster last Friday, the first one anyway. And he said that Emma would be starting this week. But I was concerned about whether they're going to be throwing things out of the window that might hit a house that's only a few feet.
Okay, we're in the process of talking about the zoning, and you can talk with Mr.
Well, he has.
Yeah, I know,
I'm sorry, with the opportunity, the only thing I wanted to know was, that they're going to be safe and that the building is going to be stable while they're doing it.
And council will be going into closed session, discussing
Okay, I'm
final
sorry.
points.
I shut my mouth. I apologize.
Does council have any more comments?
I guess I'm the only one that's not said anything, but I will say I feel like y'all did a great job on that. I was following along in the papers and talking to some of you all. And when Mr. McCormick, or y'all awarded the contract to him, I thought that was great because I saw what he did in Bedford, but I'm also familiar with areas in Madison Heights, in Amherst. I worked those areas, so I'm very familiar with those areas, the golf course and all that he's doing. I mean, he's one, in my opinion, that gets things done. So I have the utmost faith and trust in Mr. McCormick, and I think y'all did a great job, even though I was not involved. But I do know, counter to what some said, from being on that reversion, those things take time. You don't get those done overnight. Year and a half is normal. So hats off to you all that were on that and got it done. Did a good job.
The only comment that I would make is that we need to make sure that we put this building back in a condition that looks like what it did before in some ways. That's the only thing that I'm concerned about, and it's done safely. So that's.
I think that'll be discussed.
I know. I'll shut up.
We're here to talk about the rezoning
I know.
of the conditional use permit. And our motion's been made. Everybody's had their say. How about a roll call?
Mr. Black?
Aye.
Mr. Haley?
Aye.
Mr. Johannesson?
Aye.
Mr. Schley?
Aye.
Mr. Schoen?
Aye.
Mr. Stanley?
Aye.
Mayor Rush?
Aye.
Motion passes with 7 ayes.
Thank you.
Okay, next will be the adoption of the, oh, wait a minute, we're going to close session. Yeah. So we don't keep,
Zoning. We
Zoning.
can do that after closed.
yeah, get the zoning ordinance in.
No, but we can do that after the closed session.
Zoning ordinance review.
What did we do?
Conditional use. That was a conditional use, item 3.
Yeah, conditional use was first, so.
Okay, zoning ordinance review. I missed that.
Unless that's a,
Well, we can hit that real quick.
unless that's a
I mean, that's-
controversial issue. I'll
Just
definitely-
just hit it real quick.
Yeah, I want to get all this other stuff before it gets, we may be a while.
Just for the record, the planning commission published a request for qualifications related to review and revision of the town, possible revision of the town zoning ordinance. 4 responses were received. A committee comprised of Mayor Rush, Lonnie Bailey, who was the chair of the planning commission, and Mary Zirkle reviewed the proposals and made a recommendation that the town pursue negotiations with EPR of Charlottesville, Virginia. The planning commission recommended pursuit of formal negotiations, and tonight we are asking you to authorize staff to enter into active negotiations with EPR for review and possible revision of the town zoning ordinance. If a contract proposal is forthcoming, that will be brought back to you and we will assign budgeted funds for it. Right now, we're just asking for authorization to negotiate with them.
This is for the entire land use regulations.
Yes.
Nothing to do specifically with the last conditional use we were talking about.
Correct, this
right?
is-
That's where I think we got confused.
Will that include the sign ordinance?
That is incorporated into
The
the
sign ordinance?
Comprehensive
Let's have a
review.
motion, and we'll have a discussion.
I'll move we adopt the ordinance amending.
authorizing us to
Authorizing.
enter into
Is
negotiations.
there a
Yes.
second?
Second.
Roll call, please. No, wait, no, discussion.
Discuss.
Yes, it does include the sign, or look, a review of the sign ordinance.
Yes, the zoning ordinance actually encompasses signs, subdivision, and design standards, so
It's everything.
It's everything.
it's a review of all those matters.
Will it be about a 2-year process?
Don't know.
Don't know.
Mary, we had 2 people, and we talked about a package deal. And you were gonna reach out and talk to both.
And I want to speak, we did do that. Procurement policies don't allow, they allow that, but I don't think the 2 entities were interested in cooperating in that manner. We asked them if they wanted to work together, and they said, no, that's short answer.
Okay. So then, yeah, because we picked 2, and then we wanted a package deal, and that's where we are now.
And if we're not successful with EPR, we'll go on to the others.
Okay, so you're doing an RFP to them for the package deal?
We rank them, yes.
Okay. And that's a couple of years out, plus an expense.
It's a big problem.
All right, and that covers everything, folks, from,
It's time.
it's gonna take some time.
It's past time. Yeah. What was the last done, in the 80s?
Late 80s. I will say that whoever did the work for you in the late 80s did a fantastic job. For it to serve the community for over 30 years, that's good work.
All right, roll call.
Mr. Haley?
Aye.
Mr. Johannesson? Mr. Schley?
Aye.
Mr. Schoen? Mr. Stanley? Mr. Black? Mayor Rush?
Aye.
Motion passes with 7 ayes.
Now we need to go into closed session, and then we'll talk about the other stuff after this, of course, we have our people here. And let's see here. Closed session pursuant to section 2.2, 3711, Prince A, Prince 29 of the Code of Virginia of 1950 is amended for discussion, award of a public contract and the terms of scope of the contract where discussion in open session will adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiation strategy of the public body.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Johannesson? Mr. Schley?
Aye.
Mr. Schoen?
Aye.
Mr. Stanley?
Aye.
Mr. Black? Mr. Haley?
Aye.
Mayor Rush.
Aye.
Motion passes with 7 ayes.
Mr. Warner?
Come on in.
Okay, are we ready, Julie?
Okay, I'll get the resolution. Be it resolved that the council of the town of Bedford hereby certifies that, one, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which this certification resolution applies, and two, only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the council.
Okay, and I move to add to the motion of going into closed session that the subject matter of the closed session was the old Bedford Middle School. Do a roll call.
Y'all make a motion.
Or motion.
Motion first.
Second.
Mr. Schley?
Aye.
Mr. Schoen?
Aye.
Mr. Stanley?
Aye.
Mr. Black?
Aye.
Mr. Haley?
Aye.
Mr. Johannesson?
Aye.
Mayor Rush?
Aye.
Motion passes with 7 ayes.
One additional comment regarding the public hearing part. We received several emails that people could not attend, but express their opinions on those emails. Would you add that as part of the record?
Clerk
Yes.
has those, and they will be entered into the official record.
And we're going to take a 5-minute recess.
Michelle? Thank you. I'll check your emails again. I ended up talking with Reverend Henderson Saturday.
The next item on the agenda is the adoption of the budget fiscal year 2020-2021. Roll call. Let's go. Paul, go ahead.
Well, actually, I think very rude. You all have done quite a bit of work on this already and had some discussions. Tonight, staff is requesting that you adopt a budget for fiscal year 2021. Just a couple of, I guess, mechanical issues to advise you of. Passing a budget requires 4 positive votes, and if there are any changes, for example, to remove expenditures, you're also going to have to reduce revenue. So I guess what I'm saying is any changes you do recommend or discuss, we're going to have to balance, but we're here to keep you on track, so. Carry on.
Mr. Berry, you pay close attention to the proper procedure on this one, please.
Okay.
Okay, we've had a couple discussions over the budget, most recently in the last budget meeting, which everybody expressed their opinion. I guess we need a motion to adopt the fiscal year 2021 budget in its current form as a policy document is adequate to serve the town's work plan for the coming year.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make that motion that we pass the budget as proposed by staff.
I second.
No time for discussion.
You made the motion, go ahead. That's typically how it works.
That's fine, taking a vote. I mean, I go back to the budget as proposed. A little bit of the backstory to it was, as we were going into this process, we told staff that we wanted an extremely lean budget because we wanted to do projects, which actually I think was a really good process, not only from council, but from staff as well. It was a good way for us to start looking forward to doing projects, sort of a pay-as-you-go process, which is an extremely efficient way of doing it. And listening to some council members' comments earlier about being tight with our money, I think this was extremely important to do this year. It just so happened that this COVID-19 happened at the same time. The best part about that scenario is staff did exactly what we asked them to do. They did put an extremely lean budget together. And one of the things that I could point to on page 112 of your proposed budget book under CIP General Fund, you'll see adopted, in this adopted budget 2021, 0 is what you'll see under the number of capital improvements. 0. Now I'll ask, there's some members who've been on here for a fairly long time. Mr. Stanley, before you were on for a long time, Mr. Rush, when is the last time you've ever had a budget that had 0, not one capital improvement project put in it? It's about as lean as you can get as a budget. So we kind of lucked into a situation where we were on the road to adopt a budget that was extremely lean to begin with, to probably withstand some of the issues that council has a little bit of angst about. It's already built into this budget. And I go back to, staff is the one that found these savings in order to give us a tight budget. We went to a work session, and to my knowledge, at that work session, we didn't provide a lot of cuts at that work session, did we? To the proposed budget, it's pretty much in the same form it was at that work session.
Not significant.
Correct. Yeah. So, I mean, I want people to understand that for me personally, having a staff here, in most circumstances, in most governments, you find a lot of wasteful spending, things like that. Something I can tell you here for a fact, being on council now going on my 4th year, the one thing that I'm fascinated with is just how well our staff is at spending taxpayer dollars. They aren't frivolous with it. As a matter of fact, no matter what we do with the budget, no matter, if we cut it, if we add to it, whatever, staff always finds a way to make us look good. Once it's passed, staff's not gonna stop trying to find ways to save taxpayers' money. I've given examples, I'll give more examples. Mr. Jamies always tries to find a way for us to save money. We had issues in the electric with the turbine going down. She found where the insurance could pay, I think it was close to $900,000. That's a $900,000 savings to the taxpayer. Nobody on council came up with that saving. Staff came up with that saving. We have issues with solid waste. Staff goes to work trying to find ways to save money. All I will say is, the only reason I'm advocating to keep the cost of living adjustment in there the way it is because staff doesn't deserve the raise, they earned it. They've already earned what we're wanting to propose to give them. I know, because I've worked with them long enough, and I've been in the finance committee meetings, if we go into next year and there is a revenue issue, I guarantee you, before any of us on council speaks about it, Ms. Jamies is gonna come to us with, hey, we've had some revenue losses, here are ways we can save money. And I guarantee you she's not gonna put together a budget with a COLA in it if it's not feasible. That's why I'm advocating for it, because it's important. Because I just was on an interview, I think it was Tuesday, with the gentleman that was looking at doing accreditation for the police department. One of the things that he said was he was fascinated that our police chief finds unique ways to save money and keep a police force, and he does it in a unique way. He said, as a matter of fact, it was so impressive that he was going to share those unique ways with other smaller departments. Again, I go back to our staff, and we can't take for granted that they're just always going to be there either. And so that is something to think about, because if you're wanting to cut a budget, try to find it somewhere else, not off them. And I know you have the right to vote against the cost of living adjustment. I just feel like this year is not the right time to do it. Find something else. It's when it's all said and done, I think it's a $90,000 expenditure. If you want to cut something $90,000 out of there, it's there. We can find it together. But I would be interested to see tonight who on council has found something other than cutting pay to a town employee, because we've had multiple weeks to find that.
I don't think anyone's suggesting we cut their pay. I think we're saying, and I don't look at it as a cost of living adjustment. My understanding is from the discussions last time, we're 0.03 over the course of a year, and probably have a drop in the cost of living over the next year. So it is a full-blown raise. It's my understanding from what Mr. Black had said last time we were here, they've had raises previously. I do agree, they're great, by all accounts, great employees. This is not a comment on the quality of our employees. It's in a time of Great Depression numbers on unemployment, and we're giving a raise. I don't think it looks real good to the taxpayers. I mean, that's where I'm at with it. Is it possible to trim here and there? Sure. I just think right now with the proposal from Mr. Black last time, that let's maybe wait until January to look at the numbers after we've had some time for the data to come in. We have had a massive economic downturn, and we can't just be, whistling past the graveyard on this like it's not there. It is there. So that's why. To me, it's not just a COLA, and we're certainly not cutting anyone's pay.
Well, and I will agree, this budget is extremely lean. There's no capital being spent. There's no infrastructure has been cut drastically. This budget can't get much leaner. So what that tells me is revenues have got to be perfect. Revenues have got to be perfect to make this budget work. And in just a month and a half, we've seen a decrease in meals tax. I mean, everybody says it's going to come back. It's going to come back. But nobody knows when. A budget is our plan, and hope's not a plan. I want to give our employees a raise when we are sure that we have the money to do that. I look at it as we're trying to ensure that we don't get in a situation where not only are we not giving raises, we could potentially be laying off employees, cutting positions. I don't think we're out of the woods yet, economically. I don't think, that's it. I just don't understand, I guess, why we can't commit to revisiting it in 6 months, to see where we stand. I think that is the less risky option. And I've said it, I'm sure I'm not a fan of employees right now, but like I said, that's just, that's my fiscal nature. I'm very risk averse, and if someone's got other cuts, that tells me the budget wasn't as lean as you're saying it is. So, I've made a proposal last time that we take the bonuses or the cost of living. The motion right now is to keep the cost of living and the bonuses, both items in the budget. Okay. All right.
I'll follow up with Tim, because I think everybody knows how I felt about it. Yeah, in February we talked, things were rocking and rolling in the country, then this thing hit. And I said our meals tax revenue is our second biggest revenue, and that's the one that can affect us the most. The property taxes are going to be consistent for various reasons. Just the last month and a half, we've lost $47,289 from prior year, compared to prior year collections. I hope things come back and things are great, but I'm for, the second meeting in January, because the first meeting is an organizational meeting, and we revisit it. If our revenues are there, then we address the cost of living. I'm not for the bonuses, and I would want to address the outside agencies at the same time. I'm not going to spend money that I don't know that I've got. And the reason this budget is so lean, because we used to rely so much on prior year reserves, and because then we don't have capital. And and a budget is based on revenues and expenses, and that's what's been put in here is revenues and expenses. And if our revenues are not there, then how are you going to pay the expenses? So I'm for putting it off to the second week of January, and then if we have the revenues, then council can then address the other issues, the COLA and the outside agencies, and I'm not for the bonuses this year. Next.
Well, I'm for keeping it as is now. After hearing what has been said, talking to various ones, this budget has been cut. But at the same time, we've got to realize the employees here, they're the ones that keep the wheels of the town going. These type jobs, including clerical, they should get a raise. Let's just call it what it is. We call it a cost of living raise, but a pay raise every year, because they do the work that keeps us going. Now, after hearing Councilman Sly say what he did, yeah, I'm all for keeping things as is. Let's just cut to the chase here. Let's just get it done, move on, and if we get to the end of the year, and things go downhill, which I don't think they are, the economy is picking up now. Stock market is going up. So I think it's getting better. Had we needed to lay people off, it'd have been done February and March. I don't think we're going to get there. At least I hope not. But yes, we have to take chances. I call this a calculated risk. Based on what I've heard, I think we're going to be okay. But if not, the staff will figure out a way to get us through it. And that's my thinking. I'm fine with the way things are. Let's pass it as is and move on.
I'm not in favor of spending money before we know what we have. And I have a real problem with just spending it and just thinking, I appreciate the staff, I really do. But to just decide unilaterally when we can, I think we ought to wait until January and then make up a decision at that time. I'm just not real comfortable. Our economy may gain and it may not. We don't know where it's going, and it's really open-ended at this point. They've already said on the national level, they came off at one point and said 13, now they're saying 17. It's not, we don't know where it is. Now, the fact that our staff does the fiscally responsible thing, I appreciate that. And I will be in favor of it. If we're okay in January, I'll be in favor of giving them a COLA and bonuses or whatever else. But at this point, I think we need to be careful and pull back a little bit. I don't think they're going to miss 6 months. I really don't. I think they have to understand we're being careful. And I would hate to see at some point where we have to lay off anybody. I think we need to be responsible.
So, I've listened to both sides. Our employees are a key point to our organization. If it weren't for our employees, they won't use us to be sitting up here. I've listened to different council people on both sides about the same argument. The budget is very lean this year. It's lean as you probably would get one. I mean, they cut money out of the budget, all the general CIP things, and like I said, it's 0, 0, 0. I know that some people have concerns about, because the COVID-19 did put a damper on some things that we have going on in the town, and any town, or any city within the state of Virginia or the country. There is some concerns about, the meals tax, where we lost some money and stuff like that. But, if I understand what Mr. Warner said earlier tonight, we're supposed to get some relief money at 550. We still got money coming in for electric bills that we haven't got in yet. It's different stuff. And then we help all the businesses, try to help all the businesses in town the best we could to do what we can to keep everything going, hopefully smooth, just like our employees. If we don't look out for our employees, things don't go smooth. Councilman Slide made the motion to start leaving everything in there. If we done anything out of the thing, maybe we can take the bonuses out and leave the cost of living in there. And you got the outside agencies. Some of you feel like we don't need to support the outside agencies, but during this whole event, some outside agencies didn't get nothing. And some of them probably closed because they don't have the finances to keep going. I mean, if we could either approve the budget as is whole, or we maybe take the bonuses out and then fall into place next year sometime. Maybe we can look at that sometime after January the 1st or whatever. but at least show the employees that we have the support of them, because they worked through this whole ordeal. They came to work, they all came to work during this whole COVID-19 ordeal, and they done their job. Period.
Okay, we had a motion and discussion. Let's see, we got to appropriate funds after we do this, right?
Yes, sir.
Can I make one more comment?
Sure.
I just want to reiterate that while we're having this discussion, no one has actually brought up the current state that we're in. So this is why I'm not in favor of 6 months down the road, because staff is painting a much different picture than the doom and gloom that I'm hearing here on council. And when I'm looking at a sheet that tells me not only are we going to make the money that we proposed for this year's budget, which was part of the COVID-19 shutdown, that's in front of you, you can see it. We know what our revenues pretty much are this year. We've actually been able to pay our bills during the COVID-19. And I just found it funny that we've made arguments and not one person has asked staff to give us the actual numbers that we're saying is terrible. So that's why I'm not interested in kicking it 6 months down the road. I don't want a Marcy and Charlie Brown where the football keeps moving. Because in the last meeting it was, we need to cut $200,000 out of the budget before we can even consider anything else. Tonight, haven't heard any of that. So if staff comes 6 months from now and says, hey, we're good, up here, I'm gonna hear a different song, because I'm hearing it now. Ask staff, they'll be glad to come up and tell you where we are. If you're so concerned about the actual numbers, I don't want facts to get in the way of your opinion here. The numbers are real. The meals tax didn't go away. It's still there, and it actually isn't bad. So,
You done?
she's the professional, ask her.
Well, I'll say this, I'll speak and then somebody else can speak. Brian, I looked at the numbers here, that's where I came up with the 6 weeks of 47,289. And we have a competent finance staff, but we have competent people up here that know and how to manage money also. That's what I'm saying.
That's my fear of 6 months from now here, is you have 7 different people saying 7 different things. Whereas I'm telling you, we have a staff that gives you the actual financials in front of you, so we can claim doom and gloom, or we can actually look at the numbers.
Did the numbers go down $47,000 in the last month and a half? And the meals tax, year over year?
Can you address this?
Did the numbers go down year over year in the last month and a half, $47,000?
Just as a reminder, last year we had a big year with D-Day, so our numbers were a little elevated this time last year. So far in May, we've collected $102,126.51. We have left to collect versus our budget $108,000. So for June, if we collect $108,000, we hit our budget target. We are expecting to hit our budget target. We are $28,000 off of real estate taxes. As soon as that is collected, we hit our target budget. The majority of our general fund revenue lines have exceeded what we have budgeted so far this year, even with the pandemic. So if there are any other questions, I'll be happy to answer them, but that's what
So
we have.
the number that you just gave us, the 102,000.
Yeah, that is for May month to date. We still have a couple of restaurants that have not reported that could go up. If they, if they didn't do any business, then we won't get any additional funding on that. We have not heard about what our local sales and use tax is. That's why this month to date is not final, because we wait on the county for that, and they usually lag a little bit behind on getting the local sales and use tax. Not their fault. The state lags on getting that information to them.
So I want to be sure that we're clarifying this, and this is important.
Yes.
Is the 102 part of the full shutdown, or is that?
Absolutely.
Oh, so that's part of the
This
full.
is 102, 126 was April's mills tax.
So it's.
So the month of
The
April,
possibility of it
when we were,
improving is, since we're in projecting mode, that it's probably gonna look better next month.
it will most likely look better because of we're in phase 2 of the governor's shutdown. So there is some inside seating on restaurants and definitely still outdoor. So these May figures were based on all restaurants being closed and only outdoor and drive-throughs open, so. Yes.
COLA increase, it is what percentage?
The COLA increase is 2%. It will be an additional $93,621 in the budget.
So it's 2% on whatever the wage is.
Correct.
Plus benefits.
Which equals $93,621. Benefits are calculated into the $93,621.
And
I still
we're
don't think my
talking two
question-
different animals too.
I still don't think my question was answered, Mr. Mayor. Have, in the last month and a half, year over year, meals tax, is it down $47,000?
In your monthly comparison?
Yes.
Yes.
Year over year, okay.
I'm not sure what year over year means, but monthly comparison this last year to this year, yes.
Yes, that's what I mean.
This
It is
as
down.
opposed to last month?
It is,
Yes.
it is down
So the budget's on a monthly
$47,000.
basis or a 12-month basis?
Well, if you extrapolate a little bit, that, I mean, if we're
I
down.
don't want to extrapolate.
I know, you want to think
Facts.
that it's going to be here.
I hope-
The facts is, it's $47,000 down.
1 month.
No, month and a half.
Okay, but you don't, it's a 12-month budget, Tim.
Well.
We don't project one loss and then take it throughout the whole month. If
And-
we did that, we would
Yeah.
never pass a budget of either.
Just one other comment, the $47,000 that were down, your restaurants were closed, and we only lost $47,000. So,
So that's why I say you can't project that for 12 months.
And you can't project when they're gonna get back to the level that they were in at the first part of this year.
But I can look at trends, and I'm at 102 in the month that it was completely shut down.
And they're opening up as we speak. We ate
That's
out
not
Friday
true.
night.
I don't want to go in here saying, because the facts are, we base every budget off of projection.
Right.
We don't know if next year it's going to absolutely collapse. We have no idea. Guess what? We didn't know that last year when we did a budget. And all I'm saying is COVID-19 happened during this year's budget, and we have enough revenues to cover our budget. So I don't want to base what's happening now into next year's budget, because actually the facts are, we have those numbers now. And that's why I said I'm not comfortable with the 6 months. I know most people would say, well, I don't understand, what's the big deal? But the big deal is I don't think the football's gonna be there when I go to kick it. Because I'm sitting here looking at real numbers that are telling me a different story.
I think the football will be there when you kick it if the revenues are there, Brian. And also, because we're looking at the projected revenues, what we've had last year until February, this country was booming. We're just talking about meeting this year's budget, and I don't know if we're even on target on that, because we won't know till
You can ask.
till we have our CAFR. As far as the revenues, and we get the CAFR, and we see like that. But we're looking at next year's budget starting July 1. And then we've got an election coming up in November.
you're actually on target for your collections versus your current budget. So I think you're gonna exceed your current budget in your collections.
Just for curiosity, how are collections going on real estate taxes that we did?
I actually pull them every day. I pull your revenues every day just to make sure that we're okay to see what we have collected from day to day. I pulled those revenues today. We are $28,000 off from meeting our budget. So we have some stragglers in paying the real estate taxes, and I suspect that we'll collect that $28,000 by the end of the week, hopefully.
Let me just interject something on that. And I'm sorry. It is staff's position that you can adopt the budget as presented and the town can function. Whether you should is the decision you have to make. And how you do that is the decision you have to make. But for every question you have, I just want to resolve, we believe that the budget as presented is reliable based on what's happened in the last 10 months, what's happening now, and the best of our ability on our projections. It's always an educated guess. It's always one 12-month box compared to the 12-month box before and the 12-month box after. So, you know, I don't really want to participate in your political discussion because that's your domain, but staff stands by the budget as presented. Whether you think you should, we will abide by your decision.
Well, let's make a decision.
This is all about $90,000.
Well,
Well, not right now, because we got the bonus in there and.
You got the bonuses and the other.
And everything.
outside agency,
And
which is about
It's
200.
about $200,000 we're talking about right now.
Well, what would happen if we just do the COLA and forget the rest of it for now?
I would be in favor of that, Mr. Johansson, if you would like to propose that.
What? We leave outside agencies out.
Well, you know, we've talked about
I know
outside
that, but next
agencies
year
for
we
a
have a
long
policy
time.
that's supposed to take care of that next year.
Well,
We don't have a policy this year.
I'll say every year outside agencies are told that that's not a guarantee.
I know it's not a guarantee, Mr. Mayor.
And I feel for some of them, but, you know, we have to be physically responsible to all the taxpayers in the town.
And that's what.
That's where I am.
Could we not compromise on the 90,000 and leave it and get on with this?
Just for your information, the bonus would cut $82,011.85 out of your current proposed budget.
Well, to be quite honest, I'd prefer to leave the bonus in than the 2% COLA, because the bonus is a one-time expense.
Doesn't follow you.
It doesn't continue to build your operating costs year after year after year. I mean, what are you gonna cut next year to get you a 2% raise? I mean, we have no capital, we're not spending any money on infrastructure this year. I mean, you're gonna keep building,
I don't know, I'm not the one that proposed the tax cut last year. So that's all I'm saying is, you know, one year we're saying we have plenty of money, the next year we're saying, oh my God, we're falling apart. Where the facts are, I'm looking at it in front of me, and I'm going off of what's in front of us.
How about we make a compromise and say, we'll do the, I think the COLA, you know, should be fine. I don't think that's a major hang-up on this thing, I really don't. But, and put the rest of it on hold until January, and then we'll see where we are.
I'm in favor of that.
that's a different motion, so.
So we have a motion.
How would we do it?
Need to rescind it.
First, we gotta pass the budget, then we gotta.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, I think that would be the easiest. If we
First,
pass
we
the
pass the
budget as
budget,
is.
then we have to do the appropriation.
That's correct.
So you're asking to pass the budget?
Pass the
with
budget,
bonus?
and then we gotta,
Everything in.
and then we'll discuss the appropriation.
Okay.
Is that right?
Just because you pass the budget doesn't mean you have to spend it that way.
Right.
Exactly.
That's right.
So it's a motion
Pass the
Pass the
budget.
budget.
As presented.
as presented.
Yep.
And then we'll talk about the appropriation in the next discussion.
We've had a,
Yeah, it's been motion,
Yeah.
second, we've just
Discussed.
talked. So it's up to you if you want a roll call.
yeah, roll call.
Okay. Mr. Schoen,
No.
Mr. Stanley,
Aye.
Mr. Black,
No.
Mr. Haley,
All right.
Mr. Johansson,
Aye.
Mr. Schley,
Aye.
Mayor Rush.
No.
Motion carries with 4 ayes, 3 noes.
Okay, now, we have an ordinance to appropriate funds.
And let me just speak briefly, just, you all know this, just as a reminder, for mechanical purposes. This is where you direct staff to spend the money in any way you see fit, and you may do that in any way, shape, or form you want to, but it does require 5 aye votes to move us forward also. That's it.
All right, somebody make a motion to appropriate the funds, and we'll discuss that.
I think the quickest way would be what you want out first.
We gotta
There ain't nothing out now, I mean, it's,
It's on when?
we gotta make a motion to appropriate the funds, and then we have discussion, and then vote. Right?
You do, typically in the Robert's rules, you have to make a motion and discuss.
That's what I'm saying.
So you make the motion to appropriate the funds?
Yeah, I mean, I would make a motion to appropriate the funds. We don't go.
Second. Stacy, second. Now discussion. We back to where we were. I can't, John, you wanted to.
So technically, we passed the budget as is.
yep. with
So
everything.
now, we want to go back and discuss what we were discussing earlier. Okay.
When you want to appropriate
Yes.
the cost of living and the bonuses and the outside agencies.
Look, I'm where you are, Miss. I'm
Yeah.
fine with leaving. Go ahead, sorry.
Well, I'm sorry, I was just agreeing with you. I'm all for the employee cost of living raise. Yes, by all means, 100% doing that.
I'm for it now.
Yes, doing it now.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm for January.
I'm for January.
Not taking
I'm
anything
not
away
at all,
from
but I'll
employees.
compromise.
Huh?
I'm not for any, but to make this work, if it's January, that's fine. After we look at some data.
So you don't want to do the COLA now?
I've never, I don't think it's a COLA. I think it's a flat out raise. I don't think we should do it at
I'm
all,
okay with it.
period.
Well, that's
right now.
usually what it, yeah.
Like, the cost of living increase was about .03 year over year, as Tim, I think, said. I mean,
Yeah.
it probably projected to go down. I mean, so, I mean, if we're kind of throwing darts at a number and saying, well, that's the cost of living increase. We do not know that. So you can call it what you want. I think it's a raise. I don't think we should do it. But we've got to get out of here at some point tonight, so.
Well,
We can
don't
come back
decide
tomorrow
what's
night.
that.
Well, once again, you're exactly right. Cost of living is generally a raise, but for the people that work in these jobs in this town, and the clerical staff, and the great job they do, it is well-deserved and
I'm not saying
earned.
it's not.
And
No one's saying
earned.
that, CG, no one's saying that.
But I'm just saying,
Against it if it's not.
I mean, we
I
don't want
don't
to give
think
it.
you get a raise every year of your life automatically.
I didn't say that.
flat
I said
against
I think that's what some of you
They
think.
have earned
No,
it.
I said they earned it.
I
Yes.
don't think having a pulse gives you a raise.
Yeah, it seems to be that is the trend, that every year is a cost of living. I mean, last year we gave a 2% cost of living. The year before that, we made adjustments. The year before that, we had a salary study done, and we made adjustments. We continue to pay increases in retirement and health insurance. I mean, compensation is not just salary, it's.
But when you get good employees, get them trained, which takes years in a lot of these jobs. You don't train a lineman overnight. You don't train a police officer overnight. You want to keep good, quality employees. And the way you do it is pay them what they deserve and have earned.
And I mean, I can give you, listen, it's important to understand that investing in an employee
Yes.
is important.
Right.
And the reason I'm passionate about that is, I know where our electric department was 7 years ago. It was not a pretty picture. And I can tell you, it wasn't council that changed that. We take credit for it, and I'll be glad to take credit for it because I'm chair of the electric committee. But the facts are, the person we have in charge brought us those savings.
And have they been passed on to the ratepayer?
We're working on that right now. We just discussed that in the electric committee meeting.
Okay.
You were in that electric committee meeting, Tim.
I was.
So you know that conversation's already been had.
It was a start. It was mentioned, but anyway.
All right, where are we at now?
I'm just saying,
It
it
was
is an
just-
investment, and I'm
Yes.
investing in the employees that we have.
All
All right, we got folks that wanna give it now, and then we got folks that wanna give it in January. I'm a January guy. And that's only the COLA in January, and after we look at revenues. And I'm not taking anything away from our employees. We're just responsible for being physically conservative. Well, I'm conservative, as you all well know, but physically responsible for our budget. And you know, I commend our financial staff and everybody on these numbers, but you know, we look at numbers too, in our daily lives and in our businesses, and that's where I'm basing my stuff on. And again, and I've said this since we started talking about it, when the COVID hit. I was for it in February, but things have changed, and that's where I am, and that's where I'll be. But anyway.
So the motion now is to
We don't.
appropriate.
We don't have a motion, we're discussing it.
We
Okay.
have a motion to appropriate it as,
And
no, I think we have a motion on the
Yeah, I
table.
think it has.
appropriate the funds.
Yeah.
Now we're deciding what
Well, the motion is to appropriate it. I don't know what the motion is. It's
So-
appropriate it. That's what it is.
Mr. Berry.
Appropriate it.
Somebody makes a motion.
Appropriate the money.
Right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct. The debate is the COLA and the bonuses. And
Right, but the
So-
motion that's before the council right now, Mr. Berry, correct, is appropriate the money right now, not January.
Right.
So if we took the bonuses and the outside agencies out, we're looking at about 128,000.
yeah, no.
Yeah. Because Sonya just told us 82,000, 82-some thousand for the
You didn't
bonus.
take them out of the budget. The budget has already been passed. It's,
When we're gonna give it to them, if we do give it to them.
Correct.
we got a motion on the table and we
To
have a second.
appropriate, but we gotta figure out how we're gonna appropriate.
That's the motion.
The motion is to appropriate it right
Right
now.
now.
That's
the
right.
motion. So we gotta vote on that.
All right, let's vote on it.
Mr. Stanley?
Aye.
Mr. Black?
No.
Mr. Haley? Mr. Johansson?
No.
Mr. Schley?
Aye.
Mr. Schoen?
No.
Mayor Rush?
No. Now make the motion.
Motion fails. 4 ayes and 3 ayes.
I got it here somewhere. Just a motion. So I'll make a motion that we appropriate the funds in the budget that was passed, except for the bonuses and the cost of living adjustments for employees are not appropriated at this time, but shall be the subject of subsequent appropriation at such time and in such amounts as council may determine. And both and add to the bonuses and cost of living adjustments, the outside agency funding.
This may sound like a stupid notion. Does it prevent us from, say, in October?
The motion does not.
And if we-
It doesn't
we
have
bring it up-
it doesn't have a date.
It doesn't have a date.
So it's not guaranteed.
Well, it's,
Well, no,
We're gonna be here the rest of the night.
Yeah.
So you're pulling out the COLA
the bonus.
and bonuses?
COLA bonuses, outside agencies, not being appropriated right now until we have had a chance to look at revenue.
So that could be 3 months from now.
9 months.
But
It could be January
12 months.
2021.
Yeah, there's no guarantee. There's no promise that it'll happen if the revenue numbers aren't there.
Can you give me a revenue number?
It's gotta be, the revenue's gotta be what the budget is.
I need to know what that number is. I mean, that's what
in
I'm
your
saying.
budget.
It's a-
What- I mean,
well, the revenues, I think, would be, if we did it in January, it would basically be half of the
Of the
200,000, it'd be 100,000. We wouldn't retro back up and give you,
So you wouldn't retro the COLA?
no.
No.
but they would get, if the revenues were good, and I was
What do you, when you say
January.
revenues are good, what do you mean?
We're
by
on,
good?
we're on budget.
We're on budget.
Like we are this year.
This year and next year, it's two different budgets.
But that's what I'm asking, because that's what I mean.
Yes, and the
Because
revenues
when I
are
look at
on
this,
budget
I
for next
see
year.
we're on budget for this year,
Correct.
but you say different.
No, I did not say, I haven't even talked about what the budget is for this year.
But this is
I'm
what
talking
COVID
about what the
happened.
budget is for
It's
next
this
year.
We're talking next year.
Next year's budget.
I
We're not talking
understand
about
that, but you're talking about an event that happened in this year's budget.
an event that is still ongoing.
An event that's still allowing us to meet our budget currently.
Because the first 9 months of the year were gangbusters.
But we're okay now. We're okay. But we're
I think that's where the
penalizing,
difference lies.
That's
I don't
where the
think we're
difference in
okay.
philosophy
You do, Brian does, I
Tim, you
don't.
got a
I mean, the
motion on
staff just,
I get what they're saying about what's happened last year, and there's a lot of things about what staff is gonna say to us. We have to make a decision because we're responsible to the taxpayers.
Yep. And that's, I think it's important.
I mean, we talk, I get it, yeah, they're important, they're the backbone, the whole, I actually think the taxpayers are the backbone.
I don't disagree with you
And
there.
that's to me is who I answer to. And right now, we don't know. Everything could be rosy in October, and if it is, I'm sure we'll get here and we can appropriate the money. But we don't know.
And I'm sure staff will let us know.
Right.
And that would be. And council members.
When you do a budget every year, do you know?
No, but I don't budget increases when I don't know that I'm gonna have increases in.
But you did last year, and the year before.
Because we haven't had a pandemic and an economy that's done like this since the Depression.
And all I'm saying is, Mr. Sherwood is 1,000% correct. It's the taxpayers that we're looking out for.
That's right.
And the taxpayers need to know that they got a budget that was better than anyone that's ever been put before you. Steve, or Mr. Rush, excuse me, Mayor, you have been doing this a long time. You have never seen a budget like this.
Well, no, we haven't, Brian, because
So
we
that's what I'm saying.
insisted on getting rid of prior year
prepared for
reserves to balance the budget. But on the other flip side of it is, we have no capital in that, which we're gonna have to catch up at some point.
We have,
Is there any
Oh,
prior year
general fund,
reserves in
general
this
fund.
budget?
No, because we
That's
told
what I'm
you to
saying.
take the
It's
prior years
even,
out.
you keep.
To balance the budget.
That's what I'm trying to tell the taxpayer. We absolutely are looking out for their money. And it's because of the staff that we were able to do that. That's all I'm saying. I didn't go to staff and tell them to not do any CIPs.
Okay, Tim's got a motion on the floor, we've had a discussion.
you got a second?
We haven't had a second. Was that motion for also the non-government agencies?
Yeah, all three.
I'll second.
all three.
I'll second the motion.
And we've had a considerable amount of discussion. So let's do a roll call and see where we go. We have to have 5 for this, right?
Yes.
Mr. Black?
Aye.
Mr. Haley?
No.
Mr. Johansson?
Aye.
Mr. Schley?
No.
Mr. Schoen?
Aye.
Mr. Stanley?
No.
Mayor Rush?
Aye.
Motion fails. Only 4 ayes and 3 noes.
Can you do?
If we put the COLA back in there, I think we'll have one that will pass.
Yep, I agree with you.
That's what I think go.
No, you won't.
I think we will have one that will pass. Get the COLA back in there.
Make a motion, we put the COLA back
Second.
Discussion.
Discussion.
So, I'm sorry, and forgive me. So it'd be to include the COLA, but not the bonuses and not the outside agencies? Is that your motion, Mr. Jones?
Correct.
Thank you.
Clarify that.
That's it.
That is correct.
Either that or everybody gets their sleep back.
Or we can come back another night.
Nobody online?
Okay.
Before the 20th.
So what's the motion?
That we put the COLA back in and
leave off the other two until January.
Appropriate the money for the COLA now, that's what you're
Yes.
saying, right?
Yes, sir.
And hold off in advance on the COLA and the outside agencies.
The outside agency.
Bonuses and outside.
I'm sorry, say it again,
The bonus on the outside agency.
or what we're holding off on. Appropriate the money now for the COLA, well, the raise.
Yes.
And there's been a second? Is that-
All right.
Where are we on?
Clarify the motion, Bruce. That we put in the COLA now, and that we leave the outside agencies and the bonus off until January when we determine where we are. Roll call.
Second on the motion,
Oh, we got a second.
Haley? Okay. Mr. Haley?
Aye.
Mr. Johansson?
Aye.
Mr. Sly?
Aye.
Mr. Schoen?
No.
Mr. Stanley?
Aye.
Mr. Black?
No.
Mayor Rush?
No.
Motion fails, 4 ayes, 3 noes.
I make a motion, we include the bonuses and take out the cost of living, defer the bonus decision till November like we always do, and defer the outside agencies to November.
Say it again?
So eliminate the cost of living increase, include a bonus.
You mean don't appropriate the money
Don't
now?
appropriate
It's already
the
been,
money
you
for,
put in the
yeah,
budget.
yeah, don't appropriate the money for the cost of living, appropriate the money for the, bonus in November based on revenues, and appropriate the money for outside agencies in November based on revenues.
How much does the bonus cost?
Well,
82,000.
Okay.
To be reviewed in November.
Around, we got
500 for both, so 250.
Is that what it is?
It's 500 for everybody.
No, we can do that one, but appropriate it.
I'll second it.
What are we?
Bonuses in November.
Outside agencies in November, no cost of living.
No outside.
No cost of living.
No cost of
Period.
living. Bonus in November. We look at the outside agency in January. Is that
I
right?
said November.
Outside agency in November too. All right. Bonuses and outside agency depending on revenues in November.
All right, but the money's already been allocated for the raises in the budget, so we still can address, you can still appropriate it.
Yes. down
Right,
line.
you're just picking a November date to address the
The
other,
bonuses and, yes.
but we still could address at that time as well, the raises. The raises are budgeted.
That's correct, you're correct.
It's just
It's
a matter of
already
whether
there.
we do it today or next month or the next or the
Or
next
if we
or the
don't,
next.
we don't do it.
Or we don't.
Or we, well, right.
And it depends on what our revenue numbers look like.
Right.
That's what it comes down to.
It's not, we're not voting against the raise. It's voting against doing it tonight.
Is that right, Ken?
Yeah. So we're asking July, August, September, October, 4 months, we'll look at it.
Well, actually, it'd be this October because we're a month behind on revenues. See,
How many votes will that need to pass?
Still need 5.
Even months from now?
That's correct, yeah. the
Yes, that's
appropriation.
why I'm not in favor of it. Again, you're voted on to make a decision. I don't pass in the buck down the road, not knowing what revenues, you know.
Somebody better get off this topic and come up with some new ideas, because.
Well, we have a motion out there.
We got 2 weeks
We got a
to
call.
find cuts. Nobody suggested any cuts.
Nobody, that's right, nobody has.
Because when the budget was put together, things were booming, Brian.
No, my point was, nobody from their last meeting to this meeting. Nobody came to staff and said, we need to cut this. All we're saying is whether or not you should deserve a raise, or get a bonus, or outside agencies. If we were so concerned with the revenues, how come nobody on council went through this budget book to ensure that there wasn't any more in there that could be cut out? We focused on COLA,
Did
bonus.
you find any cuts in there?
No, I told you I was sick with the
That
death.
don't spend money.
No, it's not spending money. Actually, I think the analogy that was given was, in the bad economy, you don't go buy a new car. Here's the ironic thing, there's no new cars in here.
It's just,
Staff did exactly what you asked them to do. And the thanks for that is, we think we should wait longer down the road for it.
We asked the staff to do that again, back when the economy was doing very well.
And if the economy
Things
does
have gone
bad,
south.
isn't this budget pretty daggone good to withstand that? Or are you saying that we would have been flourishing in cash with this budget?
No, we would have been hurting either way after this economy.
That's what I'm afraid of 6 months from now, is we don't have a consensus of what revenues are.
We should. We got a finance director that can tell us what she gives us a report right here.
Yep.
And what the
She-
revenues
If it's
are.
on budget, if it's on budget in 6 months.
but she's already done that.
That's what I'm
So if
saying.
revenues
She's
are on
already done
budget,
that.
If you actually
Right here.
earn the revenues that are presented in that budget, that's what,
But
that's the question.
she's saying things are looking good. They're picking up.
We're saying
Then
that's
they'll
not
lose
Yeah,
right, and that's what
and
we're
I'm,
afraid of.
I'm saying, let's give the employees the COLA.
So are we honestly sitting up here saying, 6 months from now, that no one on this bench is gonna say, well, no, I thought revenues were gonna be here? Are we honestly saying that conversation's not gonna be had?
So you're admitting that they're not gonna be good?
No, I'm telling you, 6 months from now, that football's gonna move. Because we can't come to a consensus now with revenues in front of us.
We have no revenues in front of us for next year. We have a budget.
You never do, Tim. Let's not lie to the taxpayer and say we know. We don't know.
It's projected.
But, so we rely on staff to give us a
Yes.
projected budget, and all I'm saying is, this staff said, we're gonna give you a lean budget so y'all can spend money on projects. Yes or no?
This budget was prepared prior to any downturn,
The downturn happened,
right? So
and now you've got data to show you,
There's been no change in this budget from anybody.
Tim, yes or no? Was this budget cut for us to spend money? Don't tell me it's no, because there's minutes that say otherwise. This budget was cut so that we could spend money in this next upcoming fiscal year for projects.
What projects? There's-
Exactly. We said, let's raise the money and then we'll do the projects. So all I'm saying is, now we just won't do the projects. We have a budget built for a loss, because we're just not gonna do the projects now.
There's no projects in
There's
it.
no projects in this budget.
So are you on record saying that we didn't talk to staff about cutting this budget so that we could do projects in the fiscal year 2021?
No, we were on record as saying we didn't wanna see prior year reserves balance in the budget. Prior year reserves
Correct.
went away.
And there was nothing mentioned of projects. Because I want to go back to the work session that we spent over at Liberty Lake Park, where we absolutely discussed that.
We did discuss that, Brian, and you remember back in March, we were gonna have a meeting to address some of the projects that you insisted we needed to do, and then things happened, and we did not do it. But that was gonna be coming from our
Fund balance,
fund balance.
or unrestricted funds.
Well,
And then we didn't meet because of what happened.
I'm just saying, that's why I'm not willing to budge, because things have changed. Lines get moved, red lines in the sand get wiped over. we sing a different tune down the road, and
I just-
I'm not willing to concede to that. I think, I told you, I'm willing to concede to the bonus and the outside agencies, but not a
Same.
raise for our employees.
Same here.
And others may feel different, and you guys are welcome to cave or to go with that route. I'm not willing.
All right, we voted on the last motion. Was there a motion?
No, we have not.
You still have a motion.
It isn't gonna pass.
I mean, the motion is, there's a motion out there.
You have a motion on the
Motion.
floor.
It is.
The motion is to defer on the raise.
The raises, the bonuses, and the
That's
outside
what David
agencies
says.
until November.
Is there a reason we couldn't do it in October?
We need, you gotta have 30 days prior. We run 30 days to see the real numbers. October, you would see September's. We do November, you'd see October, then July, August, September, October, 4 months. The 30 days behind on the report, right, Kim?
On the meals tax.
Yeah, meals tax is what I'm basing all this on. Everything else is pretty consistent, I think.
Well,
Well, property taxes, but most of those are paid through because of mortgages and.
The money we're getting from the county, where does it have to be applied?
$550.
That's for COVID-19.
yeah, it's,
Probably will help with the business stuff that we do.
There are specific guidelines published by the state,
Yeah.
but we will seek reimbursement through the county, just to answer your question.
So that puts us in pretty good shape.
That pays back what we.
pays back what we've already spent.
Well, that still leaves us
Where did we,
$250,000.
But you're specific on what you
We
can
get
use
that
it
money
for.
was that money budgeted in last year's budget,
What?
or current year budget? The
No.
money that we spent?
No,
Did we know that extra money was coming in when we approved it?
no, but it was spent out of fund balance, it wasn't spent out of revenues.
None?
Well, no, this year's meals tax that's always committed to the Economic Development Authority, some of that money came out of that.
And it was the right thing to do.
It was the right-
I want to go back to make sure, Tim, you
It
get
was the
all,
right thing to do.
absolutely, it was the right thing to do. But I do want people to understand, it wasn't in our budget.
No.
It wasn't an operating expense.
We also purchased land that wasn't in our budget.
Yeah. They came out of the fund balance.
So that's
Which
all.
was a great idea when things were rocking and rolling. All right.
We actually approved that expense during COVID-19.
Yeah,
Did we? Well,
Yes.
we'd already.
yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
I voted
We've done a
against it for the
contract.
record.
I know you did, and I agree, 100%. That's all I'm saying. It comes down to whether we think it's right.
I mean, Bruce, would it help if we amended the motion to say October instead of November?
That's what I was trying, but
Well, I mean,
we weren't getting very far. Can we do that?
well, I still don't know if we got the votes, but
Sure, I mean,
October?
Mr. Berry, would just say we move to amend the motion that's on the
I think Mr.
floor.
Johansson can amend the motions to make.
Okay.
I move we change it to October rather than November. We should be able to tell
Second.
where we are.
So we're looking now to review the bonus, outside agencies, and COLA,
in October.
October 1st.
Whenever our first meeting in October.
Yeah, or first meeting in October. Okay.
All we would have is July, August, September revenues.
We ought to know better where we are. I mean, I don't know what else to do.
I know you're trying. I just wish the other side
I don't know what
was a
else to
little
say,
bit.
other than we try to do.
See, I agree.
No.
Wait, I agree with Brian, because, you know, it's come up.
You're not gonna do that, though? I'm okay with that.
I mean, that's a compromise by me. I don't want to give any of it. But, you know,
I just feel like we come up in October or November, or whenever we decide we review this again, I just feel like there will be
We'll be where we are now.
issues in the end, just like it is
why
now.
don't we find out?
Because it's over here.
Let's see.
Because
But that's what I'm saying, she gave you numbers and you
Yeah.
keep saying no, down
I
the road.
I get the numbers from her and what has happened before we got here.
Well,
I just
think
gotta
we
go
ought
with
to
a
know
certain
little bit
level
more
of,
about where the national economy.
yeah,
is
common sense,
and the whole
experience,
thing, so.
instinct tells me we got a problem right now in the global economy. And I'd like to wait and see what happens for a little bit. That's all.
All right, you made the motion to October and
I second
look
it.
at it for COLA, bonuses, and outside agencies
You got it.
To October.
till October, first meeting in October. At that time, we can see revenues for the prior 3 months,
Right.
because that's before the election.
Like we're all worried about the election. Yes.
Well, I think
It
that's.
does make a difference.
It's gonna make a big difference.
I hope so.
All right, you got that? Roll call.
Mr. Johansson,
Aye.
Mr. Schley,
No.
Mr. Schoen,
All right.
Mr. Stanley,
No.
Mr. Black,
Aye.
Mr. Haley,
No.
Mayor Rush.
Aye.
Motion fails, 4 ayes.
Can we, adjourn until next week?
We gotta have something we gotta have it before the next meeting.
That's appropriate. You just, no.
No, we have to have it.
We can't open July 1 to you.
Yeah, we have to have it by June 20th.
I don't mean to interject in your politics, we're not getting anywhere tonight.
All right, so we'll have another meeting. Give me an
Can
idea,
I,
Brian.
and again, I don't mean to interject.
Before,
I'm just observing. I don't think there's any way, shape, or form you're gonna grant a COLA tonight. You've said that in several various ways and forms, so. One thing I would suggest is find some deferral that works for you somehow, but staff, I'm at the point, I'm very frustrated, I'm sorry. Just do something. 5 of you decide something and we'll make it happen.
We're like.
And at this point, we have no objections, we'll do it, but we really need some direction, and I'd really like to have it tonight. So, we can come back next week, but I don't see much difference in this.
What's gonna happen, I mean, you know, October is a happy compromise. I mean, it's,
Well, that's not gonna happen now, so you can't bring it back up.
I'm sorry.
If you wanna shoot for November, you can see where that one goes.
All we're voting on is addressing it. You could say September, and we're addressing it. I'm not saying we're gonna vote up or down. I mean, or
That's
we're
what
either,
I'm
what
saying,
we're gonna
and I
vote, we're
want
gonna say
that.
we're gonna address it.
I want that assurance now, and that's
But
all
we
I'm
need
saying.
you to make a decision now.
I understand
If you
that.
defer in September, that doesn't affect us.
And I'm comfortable having that.
I'll go September.
That'll give us,
The time frame is not where I have an issue.
it'll give us,
July.
well, we already got April, May, June, July, August, you said September?
Sure.
So we'd
Let's try
have
that.
5 months worth of,
Well,
I mean, that's.
Second meeting in September.
Second meeting in September.
It still doesn't matter if it's a different budget. It establishes a trend of what the economy is doing. That's all I'm trying to do, is to try to establish some kind of trend of whether this thing's gonna get back to normal. Is it gonna stay down? I mean,
Stacy, you had said last time you'd be willing to put it off till December.
yeah.
And now it's just no-go, gotta do it now?
He said bonuses. Bonuses.
I want
Bonuses.
COLA
I'm
too.
willing to drop the outside agency and the bonuses they do, but I mean,
I thought you had said the
but
raise
the whole point
could go off
is, this is the whole
into
point.
December.
We told staff to put a budget.
I'm fully aware of that. What I'm saying is, what you said last time was put it to December. That's what I recall hearing.
He said bonuses.
But, you know, I'm gonna say this, when you put it to December, you put it to October, you put it to November, or you put it to September, what's gonna happen? All they can change within 6 months. The numbers could go up, the numbers could go down, we can do it, or we might not do it. And in the process, we leave the employees in limbo.
Right,
You're not
right.
leaving employees. You're not leaving employees in limbo. They still
break.
get their check every week.
They're being,
I understand that, but you know what I'm saying, it's just that morale thing.
if we don't
I
pass
just
a
think it's
budget, they're really
morale
gonna be in
issue.
the wrong.
Exactly.
I don't think it's at all a morale issue.
Okay, well, that's, it'll be.
Yeah, that's right.
Can we make another proposal for September?
Sure. I'll make a motion, we, review the outside agencies, the, cost of living and bonuses in September.
Somebody want, I'll second it.
But that's what we're doing now. We're reviewing it, and we can't come to a consensus.
That's what I'm
Because
saying.
we don't see data, we know
That's
September.
what it's gonna be a problem.
And it will say November, December, I
We're
mean.
gonna know more about the economy in September.
But I understand what you all are saying. My faith is in the staff, sorry. I know we have knowledgeable people here, and we need to question them. They did a great job on the budget, but we seem to be taking upon ourselves to know a little bit more than staff. And I'm not figuring this out here.
Well, that's the responsibility of council, setting policy and setting the budget. And we're
To
responsible.
review that, to review it, but not be where we are right now. The employees are the most important part of this cog here. They move, if they walk out tomorrow, what are we going to do? What are you going to do as mayor? You're going to be between a rock and a hard place.
We're not, I'm confident
But
that
I've
nobody-
heard this statement numerous times. I'm confident no employee is gonna leave.
Well, people leave all the time.
No, but I'm sitting here saying, we need to understand that there is a value.
Yes.
I'm not, nobody up here
You
saying
keep
there's no
saying
value.
that, but you're saying something totally different. And I'm saying it isn't inherently important to invest into a staff that went to work to put together a lean budget.
Right. That's
And that's
my
all I'm
point.
saying, and what I'm saying is you're proving my point, that if we can't invest in that, why do you think 6 months down the road we're gonna come to a conclusion? Because we still have yet to put a number out there that we think is a good economy. Is 27,000 in the stock market a good economy? Is 18,000 in the stock market a good economy? How do you determine what's a good economy?
Your own budget for the revenues.
Exactly, and you had staff telling you you were gonna meet it. That was when you had a terrible downturn. So what you're saying is, if we're gonna meet the budget we had last year off of revenues during a crisis, not after, not before, during the crisis. We have those numbers. Staff gave them to us, and that's my point. It wasn't good enough. We said, we don't know if those numbers are gonna continue. So what's to say 6 months from now, Tim, you don't go, I don't know that these numbers are gonna continue this year. I keep hearing that there's a recession coming down the line. What's gonna keep you from saying that then? Nothing. So what I'm saying is, I am saying, I think they've already deserved this raise. That's why I'm willing to stick my neck out and say, to the taxpayer, it's well worth it. It's well worth it for me to sit here all night long for it. Because we finally do have a staff that is pretty daggone good. And I can prove to the taxpayer, they're getting their money's worth. Because if we even vote down the COLA tonight, they're still gonna go to work to try to save us money. Because the facts are, we sat in a committee meeting and asked, have you signed that contract yet to save us money? And then we turn around and say, I don't think we're gonna earn the revenues. Well, I don't think that speaks very well. I'm sorry, that's where I'm standing. And we take it for granted that no matter what happens, they're gonna be here. And I go back to 7 years ago, that wasn't the case with the electric department. It was in pretty daggone bad shape. So we can't just assume our staff is gonna be here.
All right, where are we gonna be? Are we coming back next week or somebody gonna?
There's a motion on the table.
I don't even know. October?
I was saying September. Come back. I think we
I think
Because all we do is talk about appropriating these three funds.
September.
I second it.
September.
Okay, you got a September for the three funds reviewed. First meeting in September or the second? Give me a time. I mean,
All right, what's my
Is it gonna matter?
September. You're saying when?
Let's say the second meeting in September.
Okay, the motion's on the floor, review at second meeting in September. Roll call.
Mr. Schley?
No.
Mr. Schoen?
Aye.
Mr. Stanley?
No.
Mr. Black?
Aye.
Mr. Haley?
No.
Mr. Johansson?
Aye.
Mayor Rush?
Aye.
Take a vote.
All right, next Tuesday, 7 o'clock. I go take a chill pill. I think it's all in it. We adjourn to next Tuesday, 7 o'clock, special call meeting.